Should we be live on Twitch also? Because we're not.
We're going up. You should be able to see it now. They can't hear us right now, so. We are almost ready, everyone. Bear with us.
There's no bear with us, you liar. Don't listen to him, guys. He's a liar. We do not have a bear on the show today. We will begin shortly, though, as it says on the bottom of the screen.
Okay, me and Dan have arrived. It is our return to Twitch and return to D Live. You know, we're just taking it back, going live, bringing it to the people, trying to be more interactive. And so, Dan, I'll let you take it from here.
All right. So those of you who don't know what this is the Money Match Gaming Podcast, but now it's a show, I guess. So we're live to you here, coming from me in New Jersey. We got the Infinite over here. Sorry. He's hailing from Ohio. How you doing, Lance?
I'm doing well, man. I am doing well. Ready for another day, another talk between my man Dan Estrada. No AKA, by the way.
I don't have an AKA. Nothing against AKAs. If you want to call me something else, you can call me something else, but I won't be known by it, okay? I'm known by Dan. But yeah, so Dan Estrada, that's me. What are we doing here? Why do we have you here? Why did we decide to do this live? Why did we decide to do this at all? Because we can and because we want it to. This is the Money Match Gaming Talk Show where sometimes we talk about games, sometimes we talk about movies. We got music here every now and again. We got the occasional, I don't even know, art. We talk about art a little bit. We talk about the music and all these things. We just do it all. We talk about all in this sort of subculture. And today, specifically, we are talking about a game that was released on January 26, 2018. Now, I know what you're thinking. Didn't you guys already record a podcast episode where you talked about Dragon Ball FighterZ, which released on January 26, 2018? Well, another great game released on January 26, 2018, and that game is called Monster Hunter World, and it is made by Capcom.
Dun, 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 dun.
So I'm going to open you up with some facts about the game that I wrote down. Monster Hunter World is part of the Monster Hunter game series, if you couldn't tell by the title. But these games date all the way back to PS2 era, and they have gone till now, and they're all kind of standalone games for the most part, but they all play pretty similarly and have pretty close-knit stories, kind of like a Final Fantasy type thing, but not at all like Final Fantasy, just in the sense that it's a bunch of games that share the same name but are not the same. In this game, you can use 14 different weapons to choose from, each which kind of changes the playstyle a little bit. So you can have dual blades like I like to use, which is like fast hack and slash type style, as I like to call it, the Beyblades, because you spin across the monster's back like you're a giant Beyblade. Or you can have like a bow, shoot from range if you're more of a ranged person. Bow's kind of slow, is probably best used within a group, but hey, teach their own. You could be a hunting horn, be the bard of your group, play tunes for everybody, giving them buffs and healing them stuff. If you're a good hunting horn player, you know what? I respect you. Or, you could be big old sword. You carry a big old sword, smack people in the head with it, cut off tails and break horns of these giant monsters, and it's a lot of great fun. This is the fastest selling and the current most top selling Monster Hunter game in the whole series. which is crazy because it's been out for a month and a half now,
roughly.
Barely. That's wild. It has sold a ridiculous amount of copies. I think last estimated at 7.5 million units shipped, which is a lot for this kind of game. And it's a well-praised game by reviewers. Relatively nines or tens from most review sources. That being said, this is a review source, and we give grades, but we'll hold ours till the end of this discussion. So, Lance, why don't you talk to us a little bit about how you feel with this game, Monster Hunter World? I know you got to play it a little bit. I got to play it as well, but we played it a bit differently as the amount of time and put into it. Because I know I got absorbed a little bit into this game, and I know you didn't get to that point.
Oh, no. So, I mean, let me first say that it most certainly is, it has its art, it's good in many different ways, but I'm gonna have to just go out here and say it now that it's not my type of game, which means I don't really have a whole lot of glowing reviews for the game. In general, it's monotonous to me, to where it feels oftentimes, and most of the time, very aimless, to where I honestly don't know what I'm grinding for. And the story was so either bogged down by tons and tons of texts or just not interesting. I couldn't tell which one it was because, there's tons of text. And like for a game like this, like very dungeon crawly, I don't think it's supposed to feel that way, but very dungeon crawly. It just doesn't sit well with me overall.
Very repetitive. I can see that.
Right. So I mean, like for what it is, it's a good game. It's nicely built, but there are a lot of things that I think are missing from a game like this. This feels like it's supposed to be open world. This feels like you're supposed to like start from base camp and wander off into this giant unknown space. A lot like Skyrim, to where it's like you have things that you could do. You have multiple camps that you can go to. There's people you can hang out with. There's things you could do. But it just didn't feel that way for me. My biggest complaint about this game, because I'm just going to go into it. We've already opened the worms. I can't help it. It's coming out. Is like,
we actually opened the cans. The worms were in the can. It's the can of worms. We didn't open the worms.
Correct.
We're not dissecting any worms on this show, guys.
Correct. So like the UI is terrible. Like I hate the user interface. Like I hate the way you have to connect with groups. I hate the way like it doesn't feel like a co-op game. Like it's praised as a good co-op game. I can see why people have fun doing it, but like I don't know, doing it with my brother was difficult. It was hard, and I really, really despise when games do this, to where you create a game, its basis is co-op, its basis is, hey, you can do all these cool things with your friends, and then you drop in and you have to go through this long tutorial, and then after the long tutorial, you're not sure when it finishes, and then you kind of start missions together, and it doesn't feel like you complete them together. It feels very separate of itself, and it still feels like I'm playing the game by myself.
Yeah. Playing the story is very difficult to do cooperatively because you can't, because of like the cutscenes and stuff, you can't do this story cooperatively. Like you have to start a quest by yourself and then get to find the monster or whatever you're doing. And then you can call your buddies and they can hop in and whatever, which I understand. That is obnoxious. But doing everything else other than the story is pretty simple to get around. I know the servers the first weekend when the game was out were pretty bad. They had a lot of problems with people not being able to connect to each other. But since then, it's gotten way better. I've been playing a lot with my friends, and I really don't ever have an issue with connecting with them. Staying connected, sometimes that's a different story. But connecting and getting into the games is not so much of an issue so much as it was before. But yeah, like I said, story play doesn't really work cooperatively. You have to do half the mission by yourself, and then you call your buddy for the end half. Like you can't both start the mission and then be at the same spot, right? So that's kind of silly.
It's trash.
Yeah, that's silly. But the rest of it is very cooperative, and you can do it at whatever pace. However, that being said, I think this game works well as a single player game to do for the story, and then doing other missions like doing it again cooperatively, because one of the things in this game that I really like is the difficulty level, whereas it's like it's very difficult. I'm not gonna cut, say it's not difficult. Some people might be like, what are you talking about? This game's fucking easy peasy. No, it's not. It really isn't. There's a lot of like room for error, and then dumb shit will happen where a monster will fucking combo you and then hit you, stun you, and then knock you out, and your dumbass Palico is like, I'm on my way, but they're fucking slow as shit, and they never get to you with the heal patch. That's what it is. Like it's not they won't hold your hand. They're not going to hold your hand through this game, which I like, but it's not Dark Souls hard where I'm doing the same thing over and over again and I want to kill myself because this is just like monotonous and I have to keep starting from scratch every time again. This game has that kind of feel at times, but I think it's a different difficulty level than Dark Souls. Whereas Dark Souls, I think, is like gouge my eyes out difficult. This game was like punch my head against the wall a couple times, and then eventually we're going to get through this difficult. And eventually we did. I'm talking to you, Anjanath. That was the first boss that really, really gave me troubles. And beating that boss completely changed the game for me. I'll say that much. Like, prior to that, I liked the game. I thought it was pretty, it was okay. But the first time I beat the Anjanath, that feeling, that rush I got, the fact that at like 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm just yelling obscenities at my TV screen because I just killed this monster that had taken me 3 days to beat, and then getting yelled at by my folks because they didn't want me yelling obscenities at 4 a.m., which I understand. I should not be yelling obscenities that loud at 4 a.m. I get it. But I was, and I was very excited. And that's a moment in video game history that will always stay with me. So killing that Anjanath the first time definitely was a big thing. And a lot of people say similar things for Dark Souls. They're like, oh, the first time I got through this boss, it was, I really like Dark Souls. But in Dark Souls, I felt like I keep running into the same thing where I'm just hitting him, doing the same exact thing, not really changing much. Whereas this time I was like, well, maybe the sword and shield isn't for me. Maybe I should dual wield. Well, maybe the dual wield's not for me. Maybe I should switch axe. Blah, 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 until I switched and ended up landing on the dual wield. And I was like, yep, this is for me. I'm just going to slice and dice, yep, cut them up. And then from that point on, I started playing with groups. But only after I would kill it by myself once, because that way I could feel like I was good enough to progress in the game. I thought that was a little interesting thing.
But you shouldn't have to do that, though. That's definitely not something that you should have to do in order to play the game and for it to feel the way it's supposed to feel. Like I really hate that.
You don't have to, but for me, I think that felt best.
I mean,
I know plenty of people who played the whole thing with groups the whole time and never struggled, even when you decided to play by themselves. They figured things out. But for me, I think it's best to learn when you're by yourself, because the monster is more focused on you when you're by yourself, and you're really like the center of attention all the time, which is not always the case in group play. Sometimes in group play, you can get away with just like being an idiot because the monster doesn't give a shit about you, which is not the case in single player. So
yeah, I just kind of just didn't get that feeling. Like, it didn't feel inclusive. And there's several games that kind of clunk along as far as the cooperative is concerned. Like, there's ways to make it seem kind of cohesive and not so, all right, you hit a cutscene, all of a sudden you're by yourself. There's like ways to write that in. And I understand that stuff costs money, but I just think that was cutting corners. And I really disliked it. Like, there was several times after, we would beat the boss or the mission or whatever, and my brother would be like, hey, go to this camp. That way we can continue to free roam. And like, for whatever reason, that wasn't working for me. And so there was just a lot of things that just felt kind of like, why is this harder than it needs to be? So I'm sure you could figure it out. Like, yeah, of course. But like, in reality, it just felt like that was way harder than it needed to be. Like, there's plenty of other games that you could give examples for that are just better as far as that's concerned, Like, plenty of games that like have cooperative, and it feels cooperative. It feels like you're supposed to play it together. And the only time that I felt like it was supposed to be played together was like when you're free roaming. And that's basically what you said. When I was ready to free roam, it felt
No,
right.
I never do expeditions with people. That the only reason I go on expeditions is to farm. There's no reason otherwise to do it. You do investigations with other people. You do you do boss farming with other people. But I do mat farming in expedition. That's really the only reason ever to go there, in my opinion. I don't think there's really a reason to ever like try and kill the bosses in expeditions, because you can just do an investigation which requires you to kill 3 bosses and then they all have less health and shit like that. So I do stuff like that. But I don't think there's another game like this type of game that you can really play co-op like this. I mean, I guess Destiny is kind of similar, but it's a shooter, not an action, like an action adventure RPG, like Sword and Shield type stuff. But it is a similar type game. But I don't know. Even that, the party system was kind of wonky for, though.
I mean, I didn't play too much Destiny, which is kind of my fault. I feel like I should have. There's obviously some bad things people have said about it, which is what prevented me to get it all together. But I would say what's the one Skyrim type game after Skyrim? What was the one that's like massively multiplayer?
Yeah, well, that's a complete MMO. That's ESO. That's not the same at all. That's like saying, oh, World of Warcraft does it. Like, that's a completely different game.
I mean, sure, but I mean, okay, there's grindy elements, but that doesn't mean I mean, they're action role playing games, and that's how this. No,
but those are MMOs. This is not an MMO. There's no massive part of this. This is just a game that you can play online with friends. MMOs, the main purpose of MMOs is that you're always online and you can run into people at any point in time. Destiny is kind of an MMO, at least in the hub worlds. WoW is an MMO. ESO is an MMO. Those are all MMOs. This is an online game in a similar capacity, but I wouldn't consider it similar to ESO and in the slightest.
Either way it goes, there are many co-op games that actually do this process better, to where it actually feels like you do things as a party. It's meant to be played as a party. In this one, it felt like there were several situations to where it just didn't feel like my partner was there. They designed the game from a single player point of view. So every time you have a cutscene, it's you, your handler, and then your little pet thing. It's never the other people who are actually in your party. And that kind of takes away from that experience of feeling like you're doing something as a group. There were several times where I had to do things by myself because it wasn't meant to be played as a group. And that's what takes away from that experience for me, which made it so difficult, because it was like, I just don't want to do this.
The story I will accept that for, but literally everything else is fine to play as a group. The story is the only thing. And the same thing can be said for a lot of the games. Like Destiny is the same way. If you do story in Destiny with multiple players, you're going to have times where you feel like you're by yourself because your partner just can't do certain things in the story. That's just that's just the way the things work. Whereas the story is meant to be experienced solo, but all the rest can be done with others. You don't have to. There's no, But I think this is also the furthest into online that the Monster Hunter series has ever dealt, like dived into. I know that all the other games are online to an extent, but I feel like there's a little bit more that you can do with this one.
Okay.
But I don't know. I'm not, for all the people at home, I'm not like, this is the first Monster Hunter game I've played. I'm no Monster Hunter expert, but I know a little bit about them. I've played similar games, but never a full-fledged Monster Hunter game like this one.
And, this is my first introduction to the series as well. And they definitely didn't. This felt like a giant fan service, in my opinion. It didn't really feel like a game that was very inclusive to new players at all. You had to really like the game to be able to get into it, to my opinion.
Yeah, I think you had to really get into this game, and I will agree with that. That to really get into this game, you had to have someone, either you yourself be into the Monster Hunter series, or have someone close to you who was going to be playing with you, or just like kind of helping you, guide you through, that was familiar with the Monster Hunter series. Like, there's a lot of things they don't really tell you or explain very well in the game that is better explained from someone who's more familiar with the series, and I'll definitely say that's a con.
Yeah, I mean, this just wasn't like, Yeah, and then, this is where I think we can have like most of our conversation is I think there was like the weapons in the game were really cool. I liked a lot of the different
Mm-hmm.
elements that they had, and they were interesting in their own rights, but I think they lacked depth. There was like 4 or 5 combos with each weapon, and I
Mm-hmm.
felt like that was a little skimpy. Like you said, they have like 14 weapons, so it's a lot. I get that, but like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I could have dealt with less weapons and more combos, more things you can do. That
Once
was
again, that's
more.
another staple of Monster Hunter. I'm pretty sure these weapons exist within all the Monster Hunter games, and that's kind of how it goes. They didn't. I know they didn't add any new weapons to this game, which some people were upset about. Like longtime fans of the series were upset that they didn't add any new weapons. But I didn't feel. I felt like they all were different enough. Like I understand. Like if I'm playing as this weapon the whole time, I kind of want it to feel different at some point. I get that to some extent, but I think that there is like because there's just so many different weapons. Like if you had to try and learn a fucking billion different combos with a billion different weapons, that's just obnoxious. So I think it, in my opinion, obviously this is all opinionated stuff. I think that it's fine the way it is. I'm fine with the amount of combos I have on my dual blades, and I'm comfortable enough with them, and I know what they're used for and what they're good for and what they can do and what they can't do, stuff like that. So I don't see that as an issue so much. I think that if they added too much more complexity to the weapons, it could just make it even more difficult than it has to be.
I don't think that there are plenty of games. Again, they're not necessarily the same genre, but Ninja Gaiden's a good example to where it's like they have just about as many weapons, but they have crazy amounts of combos. And
Yeah, but they're also different. Like a straight up hack and slash game is going to be way different. Like, because you can say the same about Bayonetta or fucking Devil May Cry. But
exactly,
those
yeah.
are hack and slash games. The whole idea of those games is large, obnoxious combos. That is like bread and butter. What that game is. This game isn't about large, obnoxious combos. It's about just staying alive and killing the dang monster.
I mean, like I don't think that's a justification not to have more flashy things. I mean, like I get what you're saying that like in this game's premise, it's kind of built into it that simple's better, but it's not. Like I felt so stale playing the game that I just couldn't keep up with it. I played it for about 2 days because my brother was like, "Hey, get on, let's play. I really want to play." And after a while, it's just like, what's the point? I've learned all the combos. I've played it maybe less than an hour and a half. I picked the weapon that I liked. I dabbled in everything.
But
The tutorial
right,
was really long and painful, and I was just like, no.
that's the thing. See, because that's not where the game is its finest, and that's not where the game is supposed to be its finest. You're supposed to be able to master all the combos by the time you fight the third monster, because the combos aren't really going to always matter when you're coming up to these bigger and bigger monsters, and that's where the beauty in the game lies. Is these giant, beautiful boss battles where you're learning how to fight this like time and time again the monster is beating you, and you're learning the different things the monster does. You're learning, when he goes up on 2 feet, he's going to jump up in the air and he's going to slam down. That can one shot you. Got to make sure to get away from that. It's about learning that when he makes this noise, it's going to turn his skin into electricity, and if I touch him, I'm going to get fucked. It's about learning all the different nuances for all the different boss battles rather than it is about being flashy. This isn't a flashy game. If you want a flashy game, like you said, there's other flashy games for you. But that's not what this is about, and that's not what it ever was about.
Yeah.
So essentially what you're telling me is like, I want to play a different game, which is fine. But we're talking about Monster Hunter here, and I think that it's kind of doing a disservice by just being like, I wanted it to be this and this and this, and not saying like, well, I understand why it's this and this and this.
I mean, I do, but I mean, as far as like, I don't think that's a fair statement, to be honest. Like everybody plays the games that they like, and everybody's kind of entitled to their own opinion about the games themselves. Obviously the creators created the game, they made it the way they wanted to make it, and they've created it in a way that they feel comfortable with. But I just kind of don't agree. I think it would be a much better game if it had a little bit more depth in the combat system. And like one thing I was going to bring up was like, I kind of wish that the boss battles, not to this extent, I don't want you to take it all the way there, but was a little bit like Shadow of the Colossus, to where you kind of had to learn its weak spots. You had to break different parts off. That was like how the boss battles played out. You had to do something to kind of actually damage it at first and kind of work it down. And the game gets more complicated, so you have to break more parts, and you have to jump. You have to find ways to put it in positions to kind of hunt it, per se. And, for me, it just felt like a hack and slash entirely, in that it was just kind of extremely simple. So it's like you mentioned, hey, you have those hack and slashes. But for me, that's how the experience felt. It felt like I ran at a monster and I pressed X a bunch of times. My brother who played with me.
Once again, but you're like, that is what you're supposed to feel for the first 2 hours or whatever so of the game. That is. You're playing essentially the tutorial. Like I said, the game is split up into, so it's split up into 2 halves. You have low rank quests, you have high rank quests. Low rank quests are just weaker versions of monsters that you'll fight again in high rank, and then high rank also adds other monsters and elder dragons, things of that nature. But everything that you're doing up until you fight the Anjanath, I would say, for the first time, is not hard. It's not. I understand what you're saying. It is kind of mind numbing. It feels boring, but that's because that's what those are just like. You're supposed to be like, oh, I'm a badass. This game is stupid. This game is easy. I can beat the shit out of all these monsters. And then you come up across real challenges. The first time you fight Anjanath, the first time you fight a Rathian, the first time you fight a Rathalos, things like that. When a Basil Goose first joins your fight, and you're like, what is this thing coming from the skies dropping bombs on me? I don't like this at all. Or a Diablo opens up the ground and makes you fall through it, and he's like, you're fighting in my shit now, and I'm gonna keep digging and popping you up. Like, that's when the game is its finest. Like I said, when you're fighting a Jagras, when you're fighting a Kula,
it's
the
close.
Dude with the egg thing, Kuliaku, yeah. When you're fighting the lightning squirrel, like Tobi Kadachi, like, those guys are babies. And they're straight up babies. And then when you start fighting other things, you realize how much they're babies. Because like the first time I fought a Tobi Kadachi, I was like, man, he's kind of tough. He's stunning me up and down. What am I gonna do? And then I killed him on that first try, and I was like, he wasn't so bad. But then next fight, Anjanath, and I was like, I could take on this stupid T-Rex with dumb wings. And he was a challenge. He did different moves. He was bigger. So, like, for me, with my small weapons, I had to kind of chop at his feet for a long time and just hit him with my little daggers. And it was a challenge. Like I said, I don't want to say I don't think you put enough time into the game to really give an opinion on it, but I also do kind of feel that way.
Oh, you're definitely saying that. And I mean, that's fine. But, I'm kind of that way with a lot of different things, like if it's too much of one thing at the beginning and everybody praises it, like, if it didn't interest me at the beginning, like, I'm not gonna slug it out and just go, I'll just finish it. Like, I'm that way with anime. I'm that way with movies. If it's just boring, it's just boring, And it's just like I was never really into Grindfest. I never really liked games that had a lot of grinding in them, And this is
that's fair. I think that's a fair assessment of the game. Like, I don't like it because it's too grindy. But that's not what you've been saying at all.
Well, all that other stuff to me lacks depth, and you're saying the depth comes from the complexity of the stronger monsters. Well, that's not appealing to me. Like, you could make the smaller bosses appealing. There's many different ways you can go about designing something that's interesting from the start, and it's less grindy. Again, I started the conversation by going, overall, I might not give this justice because it's not my type of game, but in general, there was so much text. I felt like I was reading for fucking days, and it's like, I shouldn't have to do that to enjoy a game, especially if it's just this kind of exploration hunting type thing that I never got to because all the other stuff killed me on the process, on that road, on that journey. It's just like I couldn't do this. Like, some of those cool monsters did pop up, and my brother was like, don't fight Diablo. We're not strong enough. You need better equipments, and like, we didn't go too deep into the weapon department, but I felt like everything felt way more complicated than it needed to be, even though on its surface and overall, it's probably a very simple game, but like, the equipment just didn't make sense to me.
And once again, that's another thing I will agree with. And I said that earlier, like, this game doesn't do a good job of explaining things. That is the biggest downside of this game, is that they throw a shit, like you said, at the beginning there's a lot of reading because they just throw in a shit ton of like pop-ups being like, this is how you play the game. And they're just like one after the other, after the other, after the other, and there's no way you're retaining any of that information, which is why I said it's like best to play with someone who knows something about the Monster Hunter series. And I agree, that's shitty. That shouldn't be that way. That I totally agree with. And that's basically it. I understand what you're saying, like that things, even though they threw in all these words at you, nothing feels explained.
No.
Because the weapon system, at least the crafting the tree, while it's easy to understand just to do it, it is a little wonky, and it could get obnoxious later on in the game when you're like, oh, this is a cool weapon that'll really help me now, but I have to go back and fight all these baby monsters before I can, and get the materials from them before I can craft that. And then you have to, go the whole tree route, which is...
I actually would have been okay with that, but, like, it didn't feel that way, and it didn't really feel like...
Well, it does. Don't worry. It does feel that way at the end of the game.
It's just like, even the armor, I was kind of like, why do this? Like, like, they pretty much all have the same properties, especially at the beginning, and it was so simple that I didn't see a reason to craft anything.
At the same time, you got to understand, most games most games tend to ease you into how the gear works and different abilities and stats on the gear, whereas the starting gear you get is usually pretty base, maybe very little stats or anything, usually not extra abilities. Set bonuses are pretty rare. And then later on in the game is when you get like the more abilities and stuff on your gear. So like, for example, on my gear that I currently have, I have 2-piece of this Basil Goose set, which gives me these things called earplugs. And what earplugs do is whenever a monster roars, which happens a lot in the game, you don't get stunned. You just can chop on him while he's roaring at you, and you're like, there's nothing you can do about this monster. And you just beat on him. So it's great. But that doesn't exist on, like, earplugs don't exist on, like, low rank stuff because it's not as essential. Like, the stuff it happens late at the game. Essentially, there's a progression. You can't just start, because then what would be the point of ever changing your gear from the gear you had at the very beginning if it came with, like, good enough abilities?
Well, I mean, I'm not arguing that. I'm saying that at the beginning, there's literally no difference. It definitely feels that way. There's no difference between the different tiers of armor. Like, once you start the actual tree, there isn't much difference. And I get what you're saying, but I don't think that should be the case. And then especially because they spend so much time throwing everything about the game at you at once, that if you're going to tell me that stuff, please let me utilize that information. Don't just give me everything and then not let me, utilize all that information you're giving me. Because then you're just wasting breath. If I need to learn this later in the game, give it to me later in the game. And that's what those games that you're talking about, those games that you're talking about, that's what they do. They go, hey, you don't really need everything right now. And the reason is because you need to learn. And so here's a little chunk. Here's an element. Let me add on to that. Okay, you've reached critical mass. You've hit the pinnacle of how this game's supposed to play. Here's everything else. But that was definitely not how it was done. Even the way trapping monsters. Like, no. I remember you talking about the game. Like,
trapping monsters isn't really explained well at all. I didn't know about trapping monsters until my buddy got in my game and was like, why do you fight this monster? And I was like, because I have to. I have to kill it. That's how you play this game. You kill all the monsters. He's like, no. When you get it weak enough, you put it in a trap, and you get more rewards for that. I was like, what the fuck? Had I known that, I probably would have killed the Anjanath on my first try, but that's besides the point.
Exactly. So it's one of those situations to where my brother dropped in, who was semi-expert about the game. He was like, yeah, this is how you build traps. They don't really explain it. There's no health bars. You just beat on this thing. You can only carry 2 traps, and you kind of have to guess. And I'm like... There's
not really. You pretty much know when to trap a monster. It's very, very easy. They limp away from you and they go to sleep. You can catch them in a trap. If they start dropping pods, that means they're at 30%. If they stop dropping even more pods, they're at 20%. Also, if you look at the bottom of the screen where their picture is, there's a little
heartbeat
bar, like a heartbeat bar, and when it's like at its flattest, they're trappable.
I mean, sure, that's that's one way, I suppose, and I mean, like, we still caught them, so I mean, it's not like a huge complaint, but again, when you have zero information about how this stuff's supposed to work and you're just, I don't know, free balling it, like, I don't know, so it's like, just from my experience, like, it just wasn't pleasant. My entire experience playing the game just wasn't pleasant. Like, when I found my weapon and I was like, oh, the gun lance is pretty dope, I really like this weapon, I was a little excited then, but then I was like, there's 4 combos. I accidentally did all 4 combos. I guess that's it, and again, I didn't get to the super deep part to where I was fighting all these massive monsters. They've occasionally dropped in my battle, and my brother was like, all right, we got to leave because we can't kill that thing. And we left.
Shoot him with poop.
So I don't know. That was just like the extent of my game. It just felt like everything that mattered to me as far as a gamer is concerned, it just lacked the depth that I was looking for. So again, I'll phrase it all in the simple fact that obviously this wasn't a game for me, but it was pretty. I can see why people do like it, especially if they like grindy games. I'm just not one of them.
That's fair. So some other things that I have for pros, you did say pretty. I agree with that. I think it's a beautiful game. Definitely the best looking Monster Hunter of the series, because I've looked at some other ones, and this is just the best. I mean, obviously, you have the highest graphical capabilities of any of the other Monster Hunter games. It's not on a fucking Nintendo 3DS. It's gonna look pretty, and they did, and it's probably the widest scale of any Monster Hunter game. But yeah, so the only other con I have is kind of a spoiler con, but I'm gonna say it anyway because it is probably the dumbest part about the game. Is the Zora Magdaros encounter at the end of the game, or like before you start doing Elder Dragons, is the most useless piece of garbage that exists within the game, and it's nothing like the rest of the game, and it's so dumb. It doesn't make any sense. Now, you haven't gotten this far in the game, so let me explain to you how this goes. You know who Zora Magdaros is, right?
Right, the thing you're chasing?
The thing at the beginning, the molten lava dragon thing that you're riding on or whatever. So in the mission, what you have to do is you have to go on to the dragon's back, and you have to break these 3 spikes. Okay, so you break the 3 spikes, and then you just kind of walk around for a while after you break the 3 spikes, and then the elder dragon for this game, Nergigante, comes in. He's like, hey, I'm here on the dragon too, but you don't have to fight him. So you just continue to walk around is what I usually do until Nergigante gets bored and flies away, which always happens. So then he'll get bored and fly away, and then you go onto this deck and you start shooting him with cannons and ballistas until you can hit him with the Dragonator, and then the quest ends. That's it. It's nothing like the rest of the game. There's no monster hunting. There's no tracking. There's no doing anything. It is the dumbest quest in the game. And I was told that this is like a mainstay of the series, that they have these quests in every game. And let me tell you something, they should not. Because it's dumb. It took me so far out of the game. When the first time I did it, I was like, what? I was like, this is the culmination of this game? This is it? And then there's Elder Dragons and stuff afterwards, so I kind of forgave it. It's kind of like the end of the game, but it's also kind of like the middle of the game. So I was like, whatever. There's cool stuff afterwards. But really, that shit was dumb and doesn't need to exist. If they want to make Elder or Zora Magdaros or whatever a threat, cool. Go about it a different way. Fighting rocks on its back for 20 minutes is dumb. And it's dumb. It's dumb and boring, and there's no reason for it to exist. And that's my main con.
Oh, I was gonna.
Everything else we've talked about.
Right. The one thing I'll mention too is I think the concept of the game is really cool. I actually really enjoyed that element. I just felt like it wasn't, fully fleshed out the way I felt like it was supposed to be fleshed out. Hence all the things that I've been saying. Just more in-depth combos. More interaction with the monsters. So don't make it this, run at the monster, smack them. And again, you said it was deeper than that, especially when you get deeper into the game because the monsters get more complicated. But I was hoping more for hey, these monsters got smart and they put on armor and you have to learn how to break out the armor. You have to whip out this kind of weapon and you have to use these kinds of items and you have to prepare to hunt this specific monster. And that would have made the game feel amazing.
And now that does happen. Once again, all that stuff does happen. You just did not get far enough.
Well,
you were like during the tutorial and you're like, this is too easy. And then
well, it wasn't even about easy because it was hard for me because I was walking around not knowing what the fuck I was doing. Like I'm just wandering. And my brother was like, over here. And I'm like, okay. And then he went through some like forest thing and jumped over some other shit, completely lost me. And then I was like kind of getting lost in the map. And then there was just...
I don't know. When I was playing by myself at the beginning, I didn't have any of the getting lost issues or not knowing what to do issue. The only issue I had was not really knowing how to trap or why I was doing anything. But then, or like how to farm gear better. But once all those things were like explained to me by someone who knew the game, it was pretty easy. I mean, we're different people, so obviously we have different strengths and weaknesses or something. But yeah, the beginning of the game came pretty easy to me.
Yeah, I died a few times. I was just lost. I was just lost.
Like, I didn't die until the Anjanath, and then that boy did not let me live.
And then I was like switching between weapons. I was literally trying to find my way. I was trying to read because I'm one of those dudes that likes the story usually, and the story just felt terrible. And so, I think
the story was whatever. The story was just kind of like, we're on this island, we're gonna hunt some monsters. Basically, we're the bad guys of this game. We just go on to this island inhabited by all sorts of beasts, and we're like, we're gonna kill you and make fucking boots out of your face. How do you like it?
Right. So I mean, like, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's like, sure, I might have not given it the chance that it deserved, but
I mean, if you're not into a game, you're not into it. That's it is what it is. Like, I mean, sometimes you can play, like, you're not into a game and hit a hump where you become into a game. That's what happened with me at this game. But not everybody wants to get to the hump. Like you said, I'm not playing a game for 10 hours to find out I don't like it. If I don't like it, I don't like it. If I watch the first step of the show and I don't like it, I'm not going to watch more of the show. And I get that. I'm more of I fucking paid $60. I'm going to try and see this through kind of guy. But
I got it for free.
Like, there you go. See? And I think that's part of the reason why you had that mentality. Because if you would have paid the $60, I think you would have been like, fuck, I can't warrant paying $60 to get this mad this early.
I do it all the time.
I don't. And not with games that I buy. With games that I buy, I do sit on the shelf for a long time before I play them sometimes. But if I buy a game, I try and give it the benefit of the doubt until I've decided no bueno.
I'm going to make you sad. The latest Final Fantasies were those games for me. Bottom.
What do you mean?
Final Fantasy 15 and the one like something 0.
Type Zero. Yeah, I don't know anybody who liked Type Zero, so don't feel bad about that. And Final Fantasy 15 is probably one of the most divisive games in Final Fantasy's history. So once again, don't feel bad about that.
Well,
I like Final Fantasy 15.
Though.
I did, but that's my buddy who's beaten every other Final Fantasy and loves Final Fantasy hates Final Fantasy 15.
I despise it.
Yeah, and that's fair. I played no gripes with anybody not liking things.
4 to 5 hours, and I was like, I can't do this.
I could see that, and it's kind of boring at the beginning. And my favorite part was the part that everybody hated. Everybody hated driving around, but for me, it was great. I drove around, threw on Final Fantasy VII music on the radio, and did shit on my phone until I got to the location. It gave me stuff to, the time to do shit on my phone.
And then the other thing about that, just because we're on the subject, is I actually hated the characters. I hated all of them.
Oh, see, that I disagree with that.
I know, but I thoroughly dislike them.
Noctis was kind of meh. Noctis was just there, but Gladio, Ignis, and Prompto, those are my boys.
I wasn't feeling any of them. Like, I don't know. I just have to have some. I have to have a good reason to like somebody, and a lot of those, My
only issue with Final Fantasy 15 was that. Well, other than the end of the game didn't make shit for sense, but that's, that happens with Final Fantasy games sometimes, was that the demo that I played was nothing like the game that I played. the demo that they released initially, the Platinum demo. Well,
Right.
I wasn't the first demo; I was the second demo they released. But the Platinum demo felt like I was playing Kingdom Hearts, and I was so excited for a new kind of Kingdom Hearts game that I was all in. And then the game itself did not play anything like Kingdom Hearts, and that was upsetting.
Well, that would make sense, because that would have probably been more entertaining. I would have been like, this isn't really a Final Fantasy game. It might have Final Fantasy characteristics, but this is
Kingdom Hearts is basically a Final Fantasy game, but with it, a cartoony version.
Would you call it that? I don't know if I'd call it that.
It's definitely its own game. It's made by Square. It's
definitely its own game, though.
No, it's its own game. It's its own series, but it technically exists within the Final Fantasy universe. Characters in that game, a lot of them are main series Final Fantasy guys coming in, whether it be Cloud or Sephiroth from 7, or Tifa or Aerith or Yuna, or Tifa or Aerith or Yuffie or Yuna or Lala or Lulu or Waka or Titus, or all the fucking Final Fantasy characters are in Kingdom Hearts somewhere, just hanging out. So it exists within that universe. But I could see what you're saying, where it doesn't feel like the other Kingdom Hearts or the other Final Fantasy games, mainly because it feels more like
it feels like a platform in a sense, platform type game, less kind of like turn-based strategy type of deal.
Well, yeah, it's a different, it definitely plays different, but once again, all the Final Fantasy games now, like past 10, they don't play what they played like before 10.
I hope they go back to that. I really do.
I think they probably won't.
Sad.
Because they have other games come out that are turn-based RPGs and stuff like that, such as like Octopath Traveler coming out, which is going to be a turn-based RPG.
I'll have to check that out.
By Square. Yeah, it's on the Switch. They announced it, or they didn't announce it, but they showed more detail on the during the Direct. It's made by the team who make the Bravely games. I don't know if you're familiar with either of those. They're on the DS.
Yes, I haven't played them though.
Yeah, it's made by the same team who makes those, so similar, but they look really pretty. And like I said, it is a turn-based RPG, so it might scratch that itch. But I'll say this every time you mention turn-based: there's only one game in the turn-based RPG genre that is worth playing at this moment.
Persona
5. Absolutely. Yeah. I will say it until you like.
Till I play it?
Yeah, until like your eyes bleed out and you're like, I'll play the game, Dan.
Well, like you said it yourself. You're like, oh, Persona 4 is actually the game you started with. I can see why this grindy dungeon nonsense would destroy your will to play the game.
Persona 4 is a great game, great story, but it is very, like, the dungeons are mind-numbing because it's just RNG tunnels, and you don't know exactly where you're going or anything like that. And that exists within Persona 5, but those are the side quests. Like, you can do them, and they're good to, like, farm or whatever, but the main dungeons themselves are all their own fully fledged, formed out dungeon. So, like, if you're in the bank, it feels kind of like a bank. You're walking behind teller windows and into safes and stuff like that. If you're in a museum, it kind of feels like a museum. There's paintings and stuff like that, and security guards that you have to avoid. Whereas in Persona 4, if you're in a strip club, you're in a windy tunnel that has strip club stuff in the wall. If you're in a video game, you're in a windy tunnel with 8-bit stuff on the wall. Like, it gets monotonous, and like I said, it's mind-numbing. Persona 5 doesn't have that. However, Persona 5 does essentially have like a 10-hour tutorial. And as we have just talked about this game and how you are unwilling to get... it's not like a tutorial. Like, you feel like you're playing the game, but it's like about 10 hours until they take the training wheels off, and they're like, all right, boy, you can play the game as you choose now.
That's exactly how this game feels to me. I will eventually give it a try. I'm not going to lie to you, especially if you'll send me the copy. You mentioned that before. Like, oh, I'm going to let my cousin borrow it, and then, Lance, I'll send it to you because that's how much I love this game. But
Lance, I will buy you a copy right now.
I will be sick, dude.
Your own personal copy right now, because I'm not sending you mine. You're fucking crazy. Once my nephew gives it back to me, I'm playing that shit for a second time. I will buy you a copy because I know it's like
so
always
painful. It's so painful, Dan.
It's the game of games, man.
But we've ridden pretty far off topic for a good reason. But so how would you rate this game, Dan?
Well, on my scale, anyone who knows me knows or has listened to anything that I've done, I don't like to be super critical by giving a all-out score, because I think that's a little, I wouldn't say like monotonous, but it's a little ridiculous at times to be like, this is definitely a 7.3. Like, that's a ridiculous thing to say. But I would say this, from my point of view, I give this game a yes. It's a good, I do good yes, no scales. I give it a good. But also, I could understand anyone not liking the game. And for many of the reasons that Lance said, I'm trying to get my hands right with you. It's mirrored, so I'm a little confused here. But for many of the reasons he said, I agree, and I could understand anyone playing the game 3 or 4 hours and then being like, well, I hate this game. And 3 or 4 hours into the game, I was the same way. I understand completely. But if you have that friend, if you have a friend who's been trying to get you to buy Monster Hunter and you're like, I don't want to do it, Craig. I'm not fucking buying Monster Hunter. But he's keeping insisting, and he's like, dude, I'll play with you. Give it a shot. I think you'll find a lot of enjoyment with it with a friend who knows what they're doing. With a friend who doesn't know what they're doing, where you're both running like chickens with your head cut off, it'll probably be equally as terrible, and I understand. But yeah, definitely, I say 100% yes if you have a friend who is trying to get you to play or is a fan of the Monster Hunter series or even has played this game just a little bit. Definitely give it an up. If not, if you're just by yourself, it's tough to get into. I can understand that. And especially if it's your first Monster Hunter game. There's a lot of stuff that's unexplained. But if you watch a YouTube video on explaining the stuff so you don't have to read it, that might help. But yeah, so it could go either way. But my full review is a thumbs up.
I gave it some YouTube videos, by the way, and those are relatively long, believe it or not.
Oh yeah,
they were averaging.
I watched a video on like what weapon you should choose, and it was like
50 minutes long.
Yeah,
30 minutes long, somewhere around there.
Yeah,
sounds about right.
I mean, it was good. It went like in depth on all the weapons.
Oh sure, yeah, but it was still just as. It's not tedious because you're actually learning and they go straight to the point. But that just shows you like how difficult it actually is, in my opinion. Right. It's just that clunky and not so smooth that they feel like they have to go define that actual trail.
Also, you got to understand it's kind of the like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it type feeling. I see it in a way, if that makes sense.
I mean, sure, but it's definitely broke.
No. But
there's obviously contrasting compliments that make it worthwhile. You know, that's the way I view that. So it's like, hey, yeah, they're used to doing it this way, but you know, it's clearly clunky. Yeah. I don't think anyone can argue
apparently
that.
This is the most streamlined of the games, so I could not imagine what the 12 predecessors are like.
Ugh, Dan. Ugh. Yeah. Okay, so for my rating, surprisingly, I'm gonna give it an 8. I think it actually is a good game, but mainly it's just not my cup of tea. I couldn't make it through the monotonous, like, stuff. It just I couldn't do it. And then at the end of it, it felt like I was going to fight some interesting things, but still be really let down by the lack of depth between my items, between my interactions with monsters up to that point. And that's why I would have to just go, I wouldn't play this game. This isn't a game built for someone like me. Because it doesn't need flashy combos. I just need more tools to feel kind of more immersed in the universe itself. The story was just blah. It was just so bland. I didn't like anybody. I didn't like the way my character looked. I didn't like the other characters in the game. I like
the cats.
I didn't like the chief.
What you're saying. I just like the cat. What?
I didn't like.
Wait. Now, you're not talking about the cat chef.
No, the chief. The chief dude of the camp and stuff.
All those guys. Whatever. It's all about the Palicos. The cats really
bland.
stole the show.
Very bland.
Chef Cat. You're gonna tell me Chef Cat was bland?
Yes.
And his beautiful meals. Fucking Salt Bay Cat. Dude, I fucking love the Chef Cat, man. Man.
Nah.
Always talking about gains. Need more gains.
You need more gains. But, and even that was kind of like, oh, you eat food and get this weird power-up. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll eat this today. And it just, I'm sorry, it just wasn't doing it for me.
Yeah.
Once again, it just wasn't.
No, another thing that's not very well explained. I had to watch a video on eating too.
See, that's how you know.
Like I still always eat the one that gives me the most health and stamina, even though it told me not to do that, because it's just way easier to do that. But yeah, there's like a trick to it. Like if you use certain ingredients, you can give yourself, like, force yourself into certain buffs, and it's supposed to. There's strategy to food, but I'm just like, nah, this one gives me 50-50. We like this one.
And yeah, like. Yeah. I don't know. There wasn't even any grindy. Well, there actually was some grinding parts to that, right? To where you could get different meats that made different meals.
It's essentially just doing side quests. If you do the certain side quests that, like, it's like optional quests that increase your standing with the restaurant, they just carry more types of meats and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah. So once you do the side quest and turn it in, it's like, oh wow. We carry different stuff, so we can give you different buffs and whatnot.
Right. So overall, I know the game's good. I have a feeling Persona 4 is good. It's just there's certain elements of the game that just make it. It really does hurt my soul. Dan, I want you to understand how much it hurts my soul.
And like after playing Persona 4, I get it. Like, because I love Persona 4. I think it's a great story. I think it has probably even a better story than 5. But it's monotonous. It's fucking doing the same shit over and over again.
It hurt my soul, Dan.
5 has that to some extent where you do kind of do things, like you get into a routine of things, because the whole thing is about, a daily routine, but it feels a lot better. Like, it doesn't feel as monotonous and mind-numbing sometimes. When you're going through Mementos a lot, I could understand that. Because that's exactly what the dungeons in 4 and 3 were. But the rest of the game, whatever. And when we get off the air here, you're going to have to give me your address, because I already have it in the cart. It's shipping to you. It will be at your house in 2 days, Persona 5.
You're sick.
A brand new copy. Happy birthday. Happy early or belated birthday.
Extremely early. Extremely early.
Bro, you got me. Oh, you didn't get me Odyssey, but you offered to. So,
it was going to go down.
I know. You had every hope of getting the Odyssey. It's just my mom got there first.
So, and then we can start doing Switch games, because I'm definitely gonna get it now that Smash has been announced and we're on our way, which is really good for Money Match Gaming. I would say the events are going.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, if we get some Smash tournaments going on the Switch, like there's a lot more people with Switches than there are with Wii U still.
Right. I see all those memes with people ripping up their Wii U's.
And then maybe we can get some Splatoon tournaments.
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't know how that would work. I don't think you can play private matches. I think you can locally, but I'm not sure online. I'd have to look more into that. But that's just another game on the Switch that I sure do like.
Well, there was a bunch of people in the community that we have already that were like, you guys should start hosting Splatoon tournaments. And we were like, all right. Well, yeah, we don't have Splatoon. So
your boy does. I could join. No. I can Splatoon tournament.
But outside of that, the one thing I want to just leave on, just because it's on my mind, what do you think about the new Soul Calibur, my man? Did we talk about that at all?
We haven't, and I'm glad you brought that up. I am excited. I think we did. I think we did like touch on it when they announced like Zazamel or something. We were like, yo, did you see this? And you're like, yep. And I was like, yeah. I hope it's good, man. I like Soul Calibur games. I like 2 a lot. 2 is great. And 4 I played. 4 and 2 I played the most. So when I played 5, I didn't really care for it too much. I don't know why exactly. But I just don't remember. I just remember not being in love with it like I was with 4 and 2. So I hope it's a return to form. I think Soul Calibur 5 was actually one of the weaker titles in the series, just by fan reception too. So,
well, yeah, I was watching a couple of videos, and they basically explained that 1 and 2 were the God sent. Occasionally, people will go 3 was good, but he's like that's still in like a lot of contention. But mainly
4 and 5 people don't tend to like, but I like 4 for the character customization. I had like a cool character that I played with online that I was a big fan of.
I think they just kind of just don't evolve very well. So it's like it was good when every fighter game was really basic, but I just feel like, those games didn't change much. Just the roster maybe a little bit, but it's still combos, still
what I do
same
hope
stuff.
For this new one was something that existed within 2 was the like the way the story mode worked in that game, where it was like, I don't know, it was like a labyrinth type thing where you would go into different rooms, and sometimes the rooms would like unlock different challenges and stuff like that. I just thought that was a really cool way of progressing through the game and learning the game. So I hope they bring something like that back. I don't remember liking the story mode for 4 very much at all.
See,
I think it was personalized stories per character, which is kind of cool, but I really like that labyrinth thing. I thought that was really dope.
Well,
plus Link was in 2, so you gotta love 2.
Being at that age, I didn't get to choose what games I got. Most of the games I got growing up were given to me by friends. I don't think Soul Calibur 2 is that way, because that was my bread and butter. That's what me and my friend Samson used to play. I played as the Chinese girl with the short sword. You probably know her name. It starts with an X.
Xiangxi? Is it Xiangxi?
I can't say
it. It's Zian, but I don't remember what the rest of her name is. I know exactly what you're talking.
Right, and then he played with Astaroth, and it was always this weird dynamic. I won a lot, but it was always cool when he won, because he won in such amazing fashion to where he like dropped the back end of the axe on my dome and like basically one-shot me. And then all the grabs he would do with the kid. It was just fancy when he killed me. Mine was just like, oh, I'm going at your knees now. Oh, I'm going up top now. Oh, I'm going horizontal and vertical. I
had a buddy who was like dirty with Valdo, and that was rough. Man, Valdo is a fucking obnoxious, weird character.
He is. It was always funny because he'd do some really weird things that always made me laugh. And like half the time I'd die by Volvo just because the shit he would do.
Yeah, you're silly, man.
Like how he'd get on all fours and then walk towards you with his like finger knives and stuff like that.
I played as Talim the most, the girl with like the like things on her arm.
Yeah, the nightsticks with swords. I played with her a lot too. I actually really enjoyed her. She had really cool kit.
In either 4 or 5, there was like this girl with like this hula hoop thing. That thing was pretty cool too.
But I was the Siegfried guy. I'm a
Siegfried and Nightmare, big weps, slow attacks.
Yeah, I really didn't like how they meshed the characters. I know the movesets were really, really similar. I just really enjoy Siegfried. So hopefully you can just at the very least, just have his model instead of the all like armor and stuff, because Siegfried was just fun. I just like the way he looked. He's like one of my favorite characters. I have like a weird fascination with knights. I just like them. I like the lore. I like how they set it up. Like one of the reasons why I like Game of Thrones so much, and just that.
I like the armor. I think a lot of knight armor is pretty cool. That like, if you watch Seven Deadly Sins,
I did for a while, yeah, and then
I like their knight armors in that show. I think that's cool. Like when they talk about when they were like the knights.
But that should do it for us. Next week, I think we're talking about esports. We'll have one of my friends drop by and say what's up. His name's Ron. He's starting his own channel and his own journey. So hopefully that'll be fun. We'll just talk about a little bit about esports. If you guys have any opinions or things that you guys want us to talk about or explore, please let us know in either the YouTube comments, in Twitch chat, in DLive. Any of those places will work. But thank you guys for coming out.
Yeah, man.
I've been
if you listen to this and watch this, I really appreciate you guys being here with us,
Indeed. I've been part of your host team. I am the Infinite, and with me is my man Dan. Dan, do you have any closing remarks, my man?
No, guys. Just once again, thanks for listening. Thanks for being here for our maiden voyage of the Money Match Gaming podcast talk show on Twitch and DLive. Next week, I will also be faded into this earth with Lance. I don't have my green screen yet, but I will have it by next Tuesday. And you know what? maybe in a couple weeks we'll have a Persona episode.
Maybe.
Well, a boy can dream. Lance is not going to have enough time to play Persona 5 in the next couple.
It'll be
weeks,
slight dabbles.
But it's okay, listen, I have no problem opening up the world of Persona to someone. So when you suggested me buying it for you, then I was like, that's a great idea.
Well, hopefully it's cheaper. Hopefully
I'm not paying full rate for it, dog. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about my sources.
All right. But that's it for us, you guys. See you guys later.
Take it easy, everybody.